All right, hey guys, it's the Cubist MTG. We are sitting down today with our Monday video, and we are going to talk about something that I get a lot of questions about on Reddit. I see these posts a lot, and it's about what cards do you cut out of your cube. So the story of my cube is it kind of started out big. It started out with over 700 cards. I'm trying to cut it down to 540. But my issues is that I didn't know what cards to cut. I didn't know what cards I liked. I didn't know what the kind of cube I wanted. And I'm still kind of in that transition period. So I just started cutting cards as I was playing and doing a few things. I would just see cards that were like last picks all the time, or I didn't like them, or they just didn't fit into decks. And I picked out 5 cards here. There's a one that's kind of a couple in here, one that has a couple examples, but these were some cards that I cut recently, and we're just gonna go over them and talk about them. So this first one is Enclave Cryptologist, and now this is okay. I do like the level up mechanic. I didn't play when this came around, but level up is fine. But the problem is that this card was getting picked last all the time because it's just doesn't hold up to some of the other cards that do the same thing. If you had a choice between this and Merfolk Looter, you would pick Merfolk Looter. If you had this between the Flip Jace, you would do the Flip Jace because they're just more consistent, and this just ends up sinking mana into it, and it's just not great. You're essentially paying 3 mana for a Merfolk Looter with worse stats. So that's why that was cut out of my deck. Next, this card is a really weird old card that a lot of people don't include in their cube, but I threw it in there because the MTGO cube had it, and I just wanted to try it out. But this is the Grave Robber. Basically exiles cards from opponents' graveyards, and then if there isn't any cards in that graveyard, you can flip it. And when you flip it, it becomes a 5 mana put target creature card from a graveyard into play under your control. The reason why I don't like this card is it does have graveyard hate, which is important when you have combos and stuff like that in the vintage powered cube, but it is poorly statted. It's a 2/1 for 2, and even when it flips, it's a 4/2 that you've paid at minimum 4 mana for, and it just gets removed to everything. I'm just not a huge fan of this, but I mean, in theory, the card is cool, but I try to also make my cube kind of friendly, and when you have weird cards that flip and stuff like this, I just don't feel like it has a good interaction with most decks and most players, so I got rid of it. Next up were these Scrylands, and these Scrylands are sweet. They are double colored. They come into play and let you scry. But the reason I cut them is the same reason why I cut another type of land that we'll talk about in a minute. There's just too many lands in my cube. I love that the cube has decks that can have great land bases and have great synergy, because you can pick 2-3 colors and not feel limited by only having basics. But my problem with these cards is basically it's either these or the fast lands where they come into play untapped if you own 2 or less, and I just like those more. I feel like it feels better to play them. Scrying is fine, but I don't know, I just felt like these lands were just kind of out of place. Next up, we're going to talk about Council's Judgment. Now, this deck card shows up a lot in a lot of decks, in a lot of cards, and it is played in a lot of cubes, but the mechanic Will of the Council, I feel like, is kind of just not great. Starting with you vote for a non-land permanent you don't control, exile that permanent with the most votes, and it usually just gets rid of 1 card, and I don't know. The voting thing, I've never been a fan of voting in any board games. I don't like auctions for that kind of same reason, and this just hit me in a really weird way of like, I can find a better card that doesn't do this weird Will of the Council, so we got rid of it. And finally, this kind of goes along with the same thing, too many lands, but these are included for a little different reason. So I like cycling. I think cycling is a great mechanic. I think it's just lands that come into play tapped that I don't really care for, but these lands are actually, they're islands and swamps and can be searched for, and I'm like, wow, that is really cool. We haven't seen that in a long time. They make fetch lands good, but they come into play tapped. But again, these just get outshined by the pain lands, shock lands, if you want to call them. And I just think that if I didn't have shock lands, I would run these because they're nice, but I don't need both in my cube. So that's why those were cut. All right, guys, I appreciate you listening. If you have any questions or comments, please comment down below and subscribe. I just wanted to, lay out a couple reasons why I'm cutting these, and I think every Monday I should upload, 5 cards that I've cut from the cube, and it'll help me get to my goal of 540 cards. But that's that, and these ones are out of here. See you later. We'll get them out of here, and we'll see you next time, guys.